All right, I'm back. I almost said welcome back like you were the ones that were gone. So I've reset everything to 1080 and I'll keep an eye out over here to see whether everything goes all weird. But hopefully it won't. Checked all the sound. It sounds like you guys can hear me a little okay, though it's a little low. The thing is, I've got a nice microphone. This is one of the Yetis that everyone likes, and it's on a nice little extended arm here. But I've got a small desk with a giant 4K monitor that you're looking at me through. It's webcam, but you know what I mean. And then to the side here is a Cintiq tablet, which is one of the big Wacom tablets. Let me see if I can get that into frame just for fun for you guys. I've wanted one of these things since I was a little kid. Back before they even existed, I wanted something like this. I guess you'll be able to see the back side of it. But anyway, it's one of the like 20 or 27 inch or something Cintiq. It's one of the pretty high end ones, the 4K ones, and saved up a lot for it. And then I realized that I needed to save up more for an arm for it because having it on the desk was not super optimal. So I did a bunch of research. And there was a guy in Bellevue. I live in the kind of Seattle area, and he was making one for Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter didn't work, unfortunately. And it looked like it was a pretty good arm, but unfortunately I couldn't wait because it may not be done until later on this year. So I just got one of the Wacom extended arm ones, and it's pretty burly. It's a little shaky. There's a ton of reviews for the Cintiq arm that Wacom makes that you can find online. So I'm not going to do a review here, except to say that it's working fine. It's pricey, $300-400, I want to say. I don't remember exactly, but yeah. So that's my second monitor, which is to the side here. And then this extended arm for my microphone to get back on point. There's not really a lot of places I can put it. I have it attached to something over here. I think I have it attached to a desk or something, because I have a standing desk that goes up and down. And when I'm standing up, I'm not necessarily going to be doing audio stuff. So the microphone itself is attached to a fixed feature over there, when in reality I probably should have it in the corner of my desk here or something. But regardless, I try to put it over the Cintiq tablet, and then it can't quite reach. It should theoretically, as you've probably seen a lot of videos, it should theoretically be like right about in here for that sweet, sweet sound, but I can't quite get it that far. So I've got it a little further away from my mouth than it should be, and probably a little higher, I don't know. And I have it all the way cranked up, which isn't optimal as far as gain is concerned. But I'm going to talk in a reasonable voice and see what happens there. So as we're talking about, or as I was talking about, I do graphic design stuff. I'm going to move my monitor, so don't freak out. Do a lot of role-playing game stuff, and I played a lot of D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. But a long time ago, we played Traveller, which is the science fiction role-playing game that was first started in, I want to say 1980, somewhere in there. It's D6 based, which if you don't know role-playing games, that doesn't mean anything to you, but it basically always uses 6-sided dice as opposed to Dungeons and Dragons, which uses 20-sided dice and 4-sided dice and 8-sided dice and all the rest of the dice, basically. And we liked it, but then I didn't play it for years and years and years and years and years and years. And then about less than a year ago, rediscovered that there was of the version that's out now, which is done by Mongoose Publishing. It's version 2, basically, so they call it Mongoose 2.0. I think there's another version out that's maybe like Traveller 5 or something. I read a little bit about it online, and it sounded like the dude that created it split the license off, and like he does his own version, and then these Mongoose people do their version of it. I ended up getting the Mongoose version. There's sort of simple rules RPGs, and then there's complex rules RPGs, crunchy ones, I guess you'd say. My patience for super crunchy rules has waned as I've gotten older, when I was a kid, I loved them. Like we would do fucking ICE, even D&D is pretty crunchy. The original Traveler set I remember being fairly crunchy, like having to figure out some really specific fucking space formulas and shit. And that was all great. But as I've gotten older, I've drifted away from that, getting simpler and simpler. I like doing paperless, diceless kind of RPG stuff sometimes, which is basically just a storytelling game. You might use like a D20 to resolve a thing or something, but that's about it. And we do play Pathfinder, which is Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 kind of offshoot. And it's decently crunchy, but we played it for so long that it kind of sticks in. So I kind of wanted no part of Traveler 5, I think it was. And this is not me saying it's a bad game at all. It could be a great game. There was a lot to it. And the Mongoose version seemed like less stuff that I would have to learn because old dogs and new tricks and all that. And that's not to say that the Mongoose version is perfect. I think overall there are some assumptions that people have played the game before, and that's how the rulebook is written. There's a lot of things that they just sort of leave up to you to do, and it's kind of arbitrary, and so it's taken us a little while to figure stuff out. And there's other things that they just kind of, I think, assume that you already know or have played previous versions of the game. So I haven't played in so long that it's essentially like I haven't played any versions of the game. So reading through some of that, I was like, do they mean this? Like I'd go back, especially for character creation, was a little confused. Like it's kind of easy to do once you get it, and it's actually, in my opinion, the best feature of the game almost. Anyway, but it could have been written better, but it's a good game. So if I was to give it a review, I would say I hope they somehow clean up the writing a little bit, but and not assume that everyone that is playing the game has played Traveler before. But I like it so far. What I really like the Traveler, I like the character creation system, which is I think what they call a career-based system or something, where you go through your career before you start playing. So a lot of times your character is in their mid-late 30s or early 40s, depending on how much you want to age. And you build up skills and abilities, in this game's skills mainly, through die rolling through your career. So you're like, hey, I want to be in the Navy, or I want to be like a citizen, or I want to be an Army guy, or whatever. And you do little 4-year terms, and you roll on different tables to figure out whether you succeed or get through college or learn new skills and all that kind of stuff. Traveler was notorious back in the day for, because that's been a feature of the game since the original one, and it was notorious for killing characters off before you even started playing. And I actually really liked that. We thought it was cool as kids. You'd always push to do 1 or 2 more terms, knowing there was a chance that you would fucking croak and you'd have to start your character over again. So if you had really nice stats, for example, that you'd roll, you might be a little more hesitant about going deep into a career. If you had kind of bad stats, you might intentionally try to get deep into a career in order to maybe get the guy killed off and get to roll over again. Although back in those days too, we played, whenever we played any of these kind of games that we did, that was loud. I was putting some music on and it was like, meh. But whenever we did these games back in the day, we'd always roll more than one character too. Our first edition D&D parties, there'd be 2 players and like 14 characters, because each character would have like the maximum number of henchmen that it could possibly have and all that. And I remember with Traveler, we'd usually have 2 or 3 characters for each for the party or whatever. Crazy youth. Anyway, so they still do the character-based thing, which is really cool, or career-based thing, which is really cool. So anyway, that's Traveler. It's a role-playing game. So Traveler, like all role-playing games, has, excuse me just for a second, those of you that watch me on a regular basis, which is like 3 of you, remember my very slurpy water drinks throughout videos. Well, I have gotten a cool little metal and rubbery straw here. So, stealth drink. So, what was I saying? Traveler stuff. I don't even remember what I was talking about a second ago, which is how bad my memory has gotten at this point. So I'm running. Oh, I remember now. All these games have preset campaigns, preset worlds is a better example. The world would be something your campaign takes place in, for those of you who aren't super familiar with terminology and all that. So in Dungeons and Dragons, it used to be Greyhawk. I'm not sure if it still is because I haven't played 5th edition. I don't think I played 4th edition really either. Traveler in general has the Third Imperium, I think it's called. And all of these games usually come with some sort of universe that they take place in. And as a game master, you can choose to use that universe, not use that universe, or use chunks of that universe and put your own spin on it. I have always been a universe building guy, even back in the probably not 1st edition D&D, definitely 2nd edition, maybe at the end of 1st edition. I created a world, and that's this world that I use today. And I don't think that's that uncommon for older players. The guy that owned Wizards of the Coast back in the day, Peter Atkinson, he has a world that he had created in the mid 80s or whatever. He still runs like a D&D world and all that, and they do videos online. I'm the same way with D&D anyway. But I hadn't ever really created a science fiction world for anything, because we didn't really play science fiction after we played Traveler originally. I haven't played it in like 20, 25 years. So I'm running it now, and I was like, shit, I need to create a world, because as much as good as the Third Imperium or whatever may be, I just don't use created worlds. I want to be able to kind of do my own thing and all that. So that's what I'm doing right now as we finally get to the point, and that's what you're kind of seeing on the screen here is the map, or the beginning of the map. So I'm going to work on it, and you're welcome to watch me work, and I will make little comments throughout so that it's not a complete snooze fest. But I would definitely recommend probably having this video on like times 1.25 or 1.5 as a YouTube watcher, and maybe putting it on in the background. If you're interested in world building stuff, there'll be a little of that. I will try to let you know what sort of controls and things I'm using for Illustrator, but this is definitely not an Illustrator tutorial. If you're familiar with Illustrator, you'll probably see some things. If you're passingly trying to learn Illustrator, I may give you a tip or something that you hadn't thought about, or a workflow you hadn't thought about, hopefully. And I'll just be doing this for maybe an hour, and then I'm going to go outside and smoke, because I smoke cigars, and kids, do not try that at home. All right, so in Traveler you have subsectors, which are areas of space that build out to sectors, which are larger areas of space, and that's where you put all your planets. A sun and a planet is called a system. So the Sol system, that's where we would be the Sun and Earth and Jupiter and all that. For those of you that are watching The Expanse, and honestly most of you should be watching The Expanse because it's pretty fucking cool, that's basically very similar to kind of a Traveler campaign, honestly. They're a little more what they call hard science than Traveler claims to be hard science, but it has like fusion drives and things that science. It has a couple of things that in Traveler that it isn't necessarily. That's more what they call just regular science fiction-y kind of science or whatever. The Expanse, so far, I think I'm 3 seasons into it now. It's pretty hard science fiction. They have the space travel works the way space travel would work for the most part. They might accelerate things and all that, but anyway, that said, for example, this is Sol. Hopefully you can see that, my little mouse cursor. I don't have one of the little glowy mouse cursor things, so sorry about that. So in real life, Sol system would be where Earth was, and in my campaign, here is the Sol system, which would be Earth. So I put a little star around it, and then there's Alpha Centauri, which is right next to us. Now, if you don't play Traveler, a lot of this information isn't going to matter to you or make sense, and it doesn't matter in general. You basically, when you create a Traveler map, you want to have iconography that the player can kind of look at and understand right away. Excuse me, on a glance. It's complicated somewhat, but there's also kind of a shorthand to it. So each of these little hexes would represent a system, which would be a sun or suns and the planets around it. If there are more than one of these little orange, or if there's more than one of these little orange dots, like 3 dots there, 2 dots there, that means a binary or trinary system, which means more than one sun. So Lerman 16, which is a real place out yonder somewheres, is a binary sun, and Alpha Centauri, which is a real place, is a trinary system. So I've indicated that with these little suns. And then what happens is you write your descriptions. We use a piece of software called Fantasy Grounds to run stuff online right now because of all the COVID-y stuff. Our game group is local, and we could meet up, but we've chosen not to because most of us are pretty fucking old and don't want to die of flu-related symptoms. So using Fantasy Grounds, we can enter in all our stuff and basically play online. So the little star, so you'll have like Navy bases and Scout bases in the game, which basically means those two organizations have set up bases to do stuff, and that's important for the players sometimes. So that little star indicates there's one or both of those things, and you'd have to go to the description to find out. This letter up above here is how good the star base is there. So A is the best, and then B, and it goes down to E, which is just like a patch of grass that's been mowed for your spaceship to land. So having that prominent means that when you're on Earth and you're going to Alpha Centauri, you know that they have a really nice A-level star base there, which means you're going to be able to get trade goods and get into mischief if you want to, and buy super cool shit and all of that, right? And then the name of the thing, and then there's a string of numbers, which are basically what the main planet is, as far as its size, its population, what kind of atmosphere it has, how much water it has, like all of that crazy shit is listed here. I don't remember what the first one is, because Lerman has a 0, so that's bad. That might be atmosphere, maybe. I don't know. Because anything that you're marking is going to have a population of some kind. So one of these means population. The bottom line is it really doesn't matter that much, because the player can look on the description of the thing, and it literally says like 6 population means this. So they can look that up. So while these numbers are on here, they don't really need to be. And honestly, if I was to redo this someday, I probably would take out the numbers, and I would probably have a simple iconography of like, if this doesn't have atmosphere, maybe I'd create some sort of atmosphere symbol, that would be / or whatever. Because there's really only a couple of deal breakers. Like, you want to know if it doesn't have atmosphere. If it has tainted atmosphere or thin atmosphere, and you're going to have to wear like little masks or something like that, that's not going to really prevent you from going to the place. The blue dot does mean water. So that's the amount of, if a planet has hydro stuff in it. So one of these zeros indicates that this is a dry planet, which probably means it doesn't have atmosphere. There are some desert worlds with atmosphere, but for the most part, for all parts, if a planet doesn't have atmosphere, it's not going to have liquid on the surface. What's going on over here? Oh, there we go. I think I mentioned this before. I'm listening to the Alien soundtrack, and it got all quiet. So I'm like, what's going on? It's the end titles. And then next up will be the Prisoner soundtrack by Johan Johansson, which is phenomenal. Got my whole playlist there. The other one that's important on these is this last letter, sometimes number, as in Tartarus here. And that's off to the side. That is the tech level of the planet. Technology level can mean a lot of things. So if you look at a show like Mandalorian, if you look like at a property like Star Wars, And there's a planet called Tatooine. For those of you that don't know, I'm just kidding. If you've seen Star Wars, you know what Tatooine is. Tatooine is technically has a high tech level because there's laser guns and there's hovercraft and there's all this other crazy shit and ships going in and out and all the rest of that. But it also resembles Old West. It's kind of broken down. That could theoretically mean that their tech level is actually lower than the Imperial normal or whatever. And so Traveler has a thing like that where like, okay, well, Sol in Alpha Centauri, tech level A. Sol only has a C, which is kind of cool. Oh, no, wait, C is higher. I think the letters go in opposite directions in this case. So it goes, it kind of works binary. It goes 1 through 9 and then A, B, C, D, E or whatever. So Gemha looks like they're like super technologically advanced compared to Alpha Centauri. A is still good though. A means that you got all the spaceship thingies. You're like an interstellar thing. A 6 in Tartarus could mean it's the equivalent of like the 20th century or the earliest 20th century. And again, they still are going to have high-tech items because, I mean, they have a starport. But it just means that they may not be able to produce them themselves. They don't have the technological means to do so. They count on trade. So any of their technology, if you were able to find some super plasma rifle on Tartarus, it would mean it's because someone shipped it in and sold it to somebody and then they sold it to you or whatever. Anyway, this is probably this is an explanation for people that don't play Traveler, that don't give a shit. All the people waiting for some sort of Illustrator thing, they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Anyway, so I do graphic design for a living, though I do it rarer and rarer now. But it's what I'm sort of all the things that I know how to do, it's the thing that I'm formally trained in. And graphic design, for the most part, kind of does a couple of things. It's meant to, well, it does one primary thing. Graphic design differs from traditional art in that graphic design is usually meant to deliver a message of some kind. A lot of times that's packaging. So you get, of course, I don't have any packaging around because you basically throw it away afterwards. It's disposable art. So you get your box. It's got a picture of a thing on it. You open it up, throw the box away, keep the thing. Whatever graphic design went on that box hopefully compelled you to buy it, but sometimes not necessarily. Information graphics is graphic design. Posters are a weird thing because they technically could be both. There are obviously propaganda posters even now, but propaganda posters in World War I and II obviously were really famous for sort of inspiring people to go out and murder other people for whatever cause that they had come up with, good or bad or otherwise. And that is definitely considered more graphic design than art, though they are artful posters, if that makes sense. For role-playing games and for maps especially, it's all iconography. It's all basically symbols that mean other things or that indicate things, or information graphics that are meant to be sort of clear, right? So when you set that up in Illustrator or anything for that matter, you want to obviously have layers that enable you to manipulate different elements at different times. Layers work a little differently in Illustrator than, say, Photoshop, in that there is a limited number of ways that they interact with layers. While you can use them like Photoshop layers, they aren't really set up to do that as well as Photoshop layers, or they weren't intended for that originally. They're more like header categories. They're more like folders than layers. Like in Photoshop, an individual thing, like one individual thing basically ends up on a layer. In Illustrator, see, these are all grouped items, which are all these little green hexes, right? And if I was to open one up, that has stuff in it, right? So there's the polygon. There's a little path, which is the star you can see, hopefully. There's text, and on and on and on and on. And that all makes up a group, which I have grouped together intentionally with Control G so that I can manipulate them all or move them around at the same time. So that institutes a system on here somewhere. And then all of the systems on this thing, as you can tell, this goes on forever, right? That makes up a layer in Photoshop, in Illustrator. In Photoshop, this would be a layer. And then you would group these layers into a folder on Photoshop, and then you would group all these folders into a meta folder, or a higher up folder in Photoshop. Where in Illustrator, let's find this guy right here. Click on it, pan out, see where my little bounding box shows up. Actually, I can turn it off and on. There it is. All right, so down in here. So this is a system as yet to be determined, which I'll get to in a minute. And as you can see, if I turn off systems, all of the greens disappear. If I turn off this system, just that one disappears. If I turn off this one, just the water indicator disappears, right? If I was to grab this square and draw a pink square, you see that appeared above this out of the group. And if I was to drag it into this group, now that pink square is part of this system, and when I click on it, you can see that I can move the whole thing around, basically. Whereas before, when I originally drew it, it's its own thing. It's still in the system's layer, but now it drags around independently of that. Ooh, I don't know why those are unlocked, but let's go lock them. Oops. Yoink. Grid names. Oh, yeah, there we go. Boink. All right. So, draw that there. I'll delete this pink square. Bye-bye, pink square. So that gives you some idea of how layers work. And the beauty is you can make any part of a layer, any of that stuff, visible or non-visible, or locked or unlocked. You can also, you don't have to go in and like dig in an individual layer. So here's a Photoshop tip for you, basically. Locking a thing is Control 2. So if you basically either like Control 2, now this entire system-y thing that I had selected is locked. And now I can only grab that thing down below it, which is on a different layer down here. Speaking of which, I'm going to line that back up. Turn that off. Turn that back on. Undo. Oh, so it'll walk me back through all the layering undos. I want to unlock that again. Okay, cool. The only thing that I don't like, there's many things I don't like about Illustrator, but I still like the program overall. One of the things is you can't really specifically, you could go through and lock several items with the Control 2 function, but if you want to unlock things, it happens all at once. All of them unlock, which is Control Alt 2. So if you do your Control 2, lock a thing, and then you lock a different thing, and then you want to unlock something in my eye. You want to unlock the original thing, but you don't care whether the other one is unlocked or not. It's not going to matter. By Control Alt 2, you're going to unlock everything. Sorry, I got a thing in my eye here, which I'm sure is super gross for you guys, but not as gross as me. Yeah. Now this is going to be super gross, because basically what happened is my contact slid a little bit. So I'm going to find that thing. Slide it back up into my eye. Or maybe not. Does that work? That's what I get for not blinking. All right. This has officially become a hassle. So what I'm going to do is turn this little bit off for a second, wander away, and come right back. So I would just kind of fast forward to the point that I return being able to see in 2020 again. That's why live streaming is so much more excited than edited video here. I'm not sure what caused it to do that, because normally I am blinky enough. Maybe because I'm talking to y'all. Huh. Anyway, so that's locking and unlocking, and there's a little bit of Illustrator stuff. So I set up layers on Illustrator based on my needs to convey the infographics that I want my players to know or not know or whatnot. So that also enables me to work on various layers. There's a trade route layer. So this was kind of my rough draft over here, where I was messing around with the idea of trade routes, and I'm not going to be using this little sort of pink doodad thing here. So actually I'm going to delete it right now anyway. What I am going to use are these little bases, because what I figured out, turn hexes back on, hex map. I created a hex map. So if you have what they call smart guides turned on in Illustrator, it'll kind of help you out a little bit. So you saw some pink lines appear, and that means I'm just lined up on the center of the hexes, the other objects that are below me. And then it's lined up now with the top of that hex. So boom, that theoretically should be the middle. And then I turn this hex thing off and realize, oh, there's still a little gap there, right? So it's sometimes smarter than it's not, than other times. There. Now it's intersected with this one and something over there. So now when I turn that off, that's kind of off and weird. Right, so basically, depending on how close you zoom in, things will be off or on. Right. The other thing you could do that I would probably be smart to do, each one of these little white squares is a different art board. So it's essentially like a separate document. So some things I can work, I think I can select everything across the board here, yeah. So you can also align things. So I could grab these two and I could make sure, based on up here, that they are like perfectly aligned horizontally, and then make sure that they're like lined up in a hex or whatever. But the main thing, honestly, I try to do, you don't have to be like perfect, because maybe if it was a worky project or something like that. But this is just a role-playing map, so it's like as long as I'm sort of matched up to the hex itself, right? Smart guides also kind of make a little click happen when you go there. It's hard to describe, but it sort of it lines it up for you a lot of times. But it's as smart as it can be, I assume. But there are times where it doesn't, where it tries to line up on a thing that you don't want it to line up on, and it gives you little pink lines. Often when it's more complicated, right? Or like, is those ones, or was those two correct, or is those two correct? Who knows? Like, it's all fucking crapshoot, basically. And then I think that's it now. So anyway, the idea is going to be for these trade routes. Trading, it can be a big part of the game, actually. You can have groups that build military-based characters and get into all kinds of fights. But Traveler, as an RPG, is very lethal. So unless you have super burly people, and even sometimes when you do, getting into gunfights is not usually a first option. So they have other stuff that you can do, like just trade goods and try to earn money like a normal space age capitalist. This hex map should honestly be the bottom layer. There we go. Because it should be the thing that's underneath everything else. And then these trade routes, what I'm going to do eventually is I'm going to create different types of trade routes, and I'll do that by duplicating this layer. For example, I can just drag it to here and duplicate, make a copy of it, and then I can turn that one off, and I could grab this one. I can go up and go select same fill color, and now every single one of these hexes have been grabbed. And then I can turn them all orange. Look at that. And then I can turn these ones back on, and then, oh, there's the gray ones, and there's the orange ones, and I could use that to indicate different things, basically. And when I export, I could export out a version where the orange ones are turned on, or a version where the, actually, I'll just leave that for now because I might use it later, or the gray ones or whatever. So the idea, I haven't done all these systems yet, so that's why some are turned. If they're turned at an angle, it means that I haven't actually generated stats for the planet or the system yet, or copied it into my database in Fantasy Grounds. Right now, I was just mainly working on graphics. For example, though, the Sol system is essentially done. This one right in here. So we turn on sector names. I think it's the only other thing we really need. Yeah, so this is what a completed one would look like, or more or less completed one. So I offset the actual system with where it's located because it adds kind of a neat three-dimensional look to it. And then if I decide to do lines in between, oh yeah, the orange looks all right too. If I decided to do lines in between, I would do them down on this trade route layer. Let me find the line tool. Let me strokes. I gotta organize my shit better. Definitely. That's all that. I can do it up here. Let's draw a line. So there's a line. There's my stroke. All right. Let's grab that and make it 10. Let's make it 40. Ooh, that's pretty fat. I like that. Change it to the same color. Someday I'll learn how to click on stuff. So there's a couple of different kinds of pointers in Illustrator. You've got this selection tool, which is the solid arrow, which you can use to box things, like almost in every other program in existence. And you can grab it and move it and all that. And then there's a direct select tool, which is a little hollow arrowhead. And you see these little points? All these are little anchor points. You can use this to grab just one of those. And then you can grab this little hodad here and just move it around and change its shape and do all kinds of crazy shit with it. So what I would do with this is I'd turn off this system. I'd grab this point right here. I'd move it over, try to find the center where it says intersect. Big old pink line, and then come grab this one. Do the same thing here. There we go. Another thing you can do actually is Control Y, and that does this. It just gives you an outline view, but these hexes don't have like center points, so that's not as useful. Actually, the system hexes may. Nope, I guess not. I guess if if the little gray ones didn't, then those ones wouldn't either. But anyway, so yeah, so when I do something like that, and then go systems wide, I like the way that looks, right? So one of the things you kind of want to do with information graphics is you have what's called hierarchy, and hierarchy works like anything else that's hierarchy. It means from top to bottom, from the king down to the peasants. In information hierarchy, it's where you want your eye to go. It's how you lead the eye around the page. So soul being a big ass word means most of the time people are going to, when they first look at this, they're going to go, oh, soul. They may look down here at this one because it's a different color than the other ones, or they may look at this little sun, hopefully at the sun, to know that that's the center of the universe, so to speak, right? These are the sectors that are the subsectors that are beside, right? So wolf is that direction, and this is wolf. Epsilon is that direction, and this is epsilon. So these being the same font and the same color as this tells you that they belong in that hierarchy of the name of things, right? You know that these are all connected because they're all green, and these are something connected because they're all gray. And you know that this is different than these in some ways, but it also has the same icons and is the same shape. So somewhere there's a key, hopefully, that lets you know why that is. If you were to create, and the difference is travel restriction-y stuff. So this has travel restrictions on it, meaning you may not be able to go there. There's 3 layers in Traveler. The other one are amber, which I don't think I have any of. Oh no, that's amber actually. The other one is just red, where you just can't. You're forbidden to go there. Forbidden worlds. These are more like worlds where shit could go awry really quickly. And I realize that these last 2 numbers, I think, are the government and the law level. So it basically has no government and no law. So if you're going to go there, you're probably going to get into some kind of fucking fight or mischief or whatever. So that's why that's indicated. So doing that in a different color indicates a thing. If I made this square or triangular, for example, and this color, that would mean, theoretically, if you're doing good information graphics, it would mean that it would vary on 2 levels. So what could that be? Let's see. If I wanted to, instead of putting these little orange dots for suns, I could have different shapes indicating how many stars are in the system. So a square could be 1 star, and a hexagon could be 2 stars, and an octagon could be 3 stars. That's a dumb way to do that, but that kind of indicates, for example, a way that it could be done if you wanted to, right? Making this into a triangle maybe theoretically means that there aren't any habitable worlds or whatever, right? You can make up whatever you want as long as you're consistent with it and there's a key somewhere. The point is, don't change 2 things to indicate 1 thing, right? I want this to indicate quickly at a glance that there be trouble on this planet. If you're going to go to this planet, it's going to be hard. So change the color. There's nothing else for me to do. There's no easier way to indicate something is different than something else than changing whatever color it is. If you don't have a blue dot, you don't have water. Boom, right? If I really wanted to indicate the amount of water, then I could do a little pie chart, or I could step it in a full water, half water, quarter water, or whatever, right? There's a million different ways to do it. Just make sure you're consistent with your information and make it as simple as possible. I want to make another one of these lines. I'm going to hold down the Alt key with my direct select over it, with my regular select tool over it, and you can see it do a little duplicate. See it change there into a little thing. And then I'm going to click and drag, and now I've made a copy, right? Then I'm going to switch to my direct select tool, which I think the shortcut for is A, but I don't use shortcut keys in this very often. And then at this point, actually, let's turn off this system here. I can have this match with the other point of that, right? See, I can close up anchor to anchor. And then I can go up to here Do that, and now all of a sudden there's another route. Now, right now, these routes don't indicate anything other than there are trade routes here, but there could theoretically be trade routes between any of the planets. So to provide more useful information is what's going to happen is I'm either going to color code these to mean like certain materials, though that gets very complicated. But what there is in Traveler is what's called a jump distance. So each of these hexes indicated a distance, in this case a parsec, which is 3 light years. So let's see here. So what I did there was I highlighted the text that I wanted to change. And by change, I wanted to change the format of it, not what the text actually said. So I highlight it. I click this little eyedropper tool, which has disappeared. Oh, no, there it is. Click the little eyedropper tool, and then I click the eyedropper tool on a sample of the thing. So I've now changed it to this font and this color that Sirius is, only it's a 2. And now I want to change it to the same color as the base things. And I do want to make it a little bigger, but I've saved myself a lot of clicks with that eyedropper is the bottom line. All right. So anyway, so each of these parsecs is, to travel around in Traveler, you have these jump engines, which are like warp engines. And instead of going warp factor 1 or warp factor 2 or whatever it is, it's jump 1 and jump 2. And that indicates how many of these hexes you can hop on one load of fuel. So if you have a jump 1 ship would be adjacent. If you have a jump 2 ship, you could jump from here to here, right? Yoink. And then this little symbol indicates that there's a gas giant that you could refill in. You can also buy fuel at spaceports, but sometimes, like this is a D spaceport, it might not have pretty good fuel. You might want to just go to the thing or whatever. So I'm messing around. I haven't decided yet. These lines I like for trade route stuff, but at the same time, having just a number right there would indicate that this is a jump 2 trade route of some kind, right? And that would be pretty easy. And then having a 3 right here would indicate that this is a jump 3 route, but honestly, in order to kind of make that make any sense, you'd have to stick a 3 here. But then you'd have to know that those 2 3s are connected, because otherwise, if you had like a 3 here, like are you going to this one 3 or are you going to that one 3? But you are able to do either one of them, right? So then do I just get into this thing where I'm kind of like minesweepering it, you know, with all these little numbers next to things? Maybe. I haven't decided yet. But then you've got, let's see, you've got a 3 here. For there, but then do I indicate that this is 3 as well? Because the difference is moot, right? So if I was to do that, it's like, well, shit's getting cluttery now. Or do I just pick out one path that's sort of the official path to go 3, and I do that kind of thing, right? That's what I'm running into. There's also more complicated ones where I do this. Right, or something similar. Honestly, with this, I think I like the idea of that, but it's going to need an outline. There we go. So that's okay. As a designer, I'm kind of looking at this line and thinking it's a little thin, especially compared to these hexes, which makes it stand out a little more. Right, but because we're here to experiment, let's bump it up to 2. That definitely is bordering on too thick. Here's the interesting thing you can do, though, is you can indicate whether this stroke is on the middle of the stroke of the 3 itself or inside or outside, right? So you're like, what? So that's over here. So I'm aligning it right now kind of on the center. If I was to do this, do I have to have it highlighted? All right. It's annoying. I could do that. Oh, I wonder if I have to have it, I have to make this into an object. Otherwise, it's just going to do normal thing here. So Shift Control O, turn this from a font to an object. So now it can be manipulated like artwork, where otherwise, for example, if you were going to use your direct select, which is a thing that you can use to grab little anchor points like we talked about before, this doesn't have an anchor point because it's a font. It just has a little line there, and I can use that to manipulate and move it around, but that's it. Turning this into an object means that this now has anchor points, and I can grab them and make crazy shark fin 3. But it also means I can't ever edit this again into another number. It is now forever a 3. It is an object that looks like a 3 as opposed to a 3. Anyway, but that also means that I can do that. You see how it went in? So that's on the center of the line. That's on the inside of the line. And this is on the outside of the line. And just for whatever reason, a lot of times outside of the line looks better to me, right? So the difference between this, okay, so this on the inside, that looks horrible to me. It looks too skinny. It's not the font that I really want. This little inside thing did some crazy shit, and no likey at all, right? That's okay. I could deal with that if I needed to, but honestly, this to me is better. Made it a little fatter, makes it stand out in here. So there'd be many options. You're like, why so detailed? Well, this is all considerations you make, right? You're in control of the thing. You can do the fuck you want. So basically, you could take this thing if you wanted to. You just have to have a reason for it. And you could slide it at an angle, you know, to match whatever your line is there. You could shrink it up so that it disappears entirely inside the thing, in which case you don't need to put an outline around it, right? What's the point of that? So if you're going to have an outline, you want it to poke out a little bit. Or you could even exaggerate it and go bigger, right? And do something like that, which is like 3, suck a dick. So the idea, though, would be just to be indicating specific trade routes and how far they can jump. Because in game terms, there's spaceships, for example, that if they're jump 2, they don't care about jump 3 trade routes. They can't do them. They would jump 2, 1, 2, and then they'd be floating out in space here until they died or someone came and rescued them. So the idea would be to indicate at a glance what routes are sort of okay for you to do. So if you're starting on Sol in your jump 2 ship and you want to go to Vulcan, you're fucked. And by the way, I'm mixing fictional. I'm mixing real stars like Lerman 16AB. I think Gemma might be a real thing. Alpha Centauri obviously is a real thing. Wolf 359 is definitely a real thing. So I'm mixing real ones up with fictional stuff. So I have Vulcan. I think I have Romulan down below, and Andor. Those are my Star Trek nods. And then I have Dakara, which is, I think, from fucking Stargate, I want to say. And there's one Star Wars one in here. I like Star Wars just fine. I'm a big Last Jedi fan, so sorry to disappoint half of you or whatever. But the thing with Star Wars is it's definitely space opera science fiction. And it's a type of science fiction that I don't want to run as an RPG because it doesn't interest me as much as more hard sci-fi personal stories. And the system isn't built for it. There is a Star Wars Traveler adaptation that I saw online. And speaking of graphic design, I loved their freaking player's handbook. Like, it was so well designed and interesting. But you're creating kind of normal characters. in Traveler. So Star Wars is really a game about being a super heroic character, and there's a huge difference. Like D&D is a game about heroes. You should be eventually one of sort of the baddest ass people in your D&D universe. And whatever story arc, and here's a DM tip, whatever story arc as a DM that you're designing, it really should kind of be the most interesting thing that's happened in the world. Like if you have some weird event that happened 5,000 years in the past, and that event is cooler than the thing that you're running now, you might as well just run the thing 5,000 years in the past. If it's something that leads to the thing in the present, that's what you want to use that for. If these events that happened in the past lead to this cool thing that you're running now, that's great. And that's why I'm not a huge sort of prequel guy in general, because wherever you're starting your story should be the most interesting place that you're starting your story, right? If there's background, I mean, and I know tons of authors do it and tons of books do it because they want to milk some more stuff out of these characters. HBO wants to milk that Game of Thrones cow. So it's got like it's, 1,000 year ago teat, and it's a Targaryen blah, blah, blah teat or whatever. And it's like, why you should have started with that. If those are cooler than the thing that I just watched, start with that. We won't get into the whole how Game of Thrones ended thing, but you know what I mean. But anyway, so I have Sheely here for my Star Wars one, which is they're one of the, along with the there's two races of like head horn tentacle things coming out of people, and that's one of them. They're separate, I think, from the things that were in Jabba's palace. The ladies, the blue lady, because they have the Sheely Tagara, maybe. They have the red and white stripes, which are really cool. Anyway, so that was a little side adventure here. So yeah, if you have a jump 2 ship and you start from Earth, you're going to get to go to Alpha Centauri and into Libu. Man, who names these things? It was me. And then you go to here and Mortal Coil and Nomura and Ashima and Jemha and Lerman, and you still can't get to Vulcan, right? But you can hop over to Wolf and get to Andor, and you can get all of this stuff, and you can get all of this stuff, right? That's kind of interesting, actually. I've sort of isolated Vulcan, which is pretty cool. I think Romulus is that way too. Romulus is even more isolated. Holy cow. So you got to do a jump 4 to get to that from anywhere here, unless you go all the way around to here, and then you can do a jump 2 from the side. But if you have a jump 3 ship, most things are going to be available to you. You can get to Vulcan, right? However, if you want to get to WISE 0855, you're going to have to do, you're going to have to do 2 jumps at least. Even jump 3, actually, you're going to have to go to Alpha Centauri, and then to Lerman, and then the Vulcan, and then the WISE, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. WISE is too far even. I think the max the game goes is jump 6. So a better example might be Draglin here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is jump 6 away. So to get there with a little jump 2 ship, you're probably going to have to circle the fuck all the way around up here somewhere and come back down. With jump 3, you can go here, here, there, right? Or come around this direction and do that. And a jump 4, you can get to Vulcan and then go directly to it. So that's just 2 jumps. It's all fuel cost and all this rest of this shit. So these are all things, to get back to the kind of the information point, these are all things that I need to indicate graphically, and that I get to decide how to do that based on aesthetics. Just purely what I think works, and also with the education / training that I've had of what makes it easier on the human eye or for people's brains, right? And it's the reason that smart software companies pay UI designers and UX designers separately from people who code UI or UX. They're different disciplines. Knowing how people use or operate devices or how they pull in information graphics and understand how to use a thing is a drastically different discipline than how to code that behavior. So some people can do both, absolutely, but those are what they call kind of unicorns. Someone who can do both equally well is definitely a unicorn and should theoretically be paid as such. But unfortunately, there's a lot of jobs that pay very little and expect you to do both things, basically, because we always want to get the most out of our money. But something's going to suffer, for sure. Anyway, that's my little side job rant. So I've basically set up, all these little hexes underneath there. Bonk. I originally had hex numbers, and this is the other thing, too. When I have this little worksheet kind of to the side, my hexes were blue. Oh, somebody's missing some stuff. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, there it is. So this and that. Oops, system is not unlocked. Unlock system. Your hex is still... Oh, there we go. These two things did not get snatched up when I moved everything over. So... I believe they go here. Looks about right. Oops. And they're not going to go back in the perfect spot where these other ones went, unfortunately. Unless I rotate, I guess I could rotate everything, is what I should probably do. That's the other thing with graphic design, is it often has a slight element of OCD to it. Not realsy OCD. The thing that we just sort of casually refer to as OCD, which is just people wanting to do a good job. Real OCD is a huge fucking pain in the ass. And not funny to mess with. All right, so there we go. Anyway, so I had originally built this one big sheet, and there's my little keys that I had over here, and these have been blue, and oh man, I'm missing a whole bunch through here. What a knucklehead. I'll figure it out as I get over there. But that's a thing that happens. Oh yeah, there's one orange dot on this guy. It's like, well, that really needs to be, I was doing this so late last night. Oops, let's do that. Some of them are okay. This guy, if I forget, he'll end up not being a binary star anymore, and that'll be a bummer. Because that means any of the ones that are binary stars here means that they're actual systems that exist in our solar system, or in our galaxy. Here we go. Kruger 60. The rest of these I can kind of do piecemeal if they're just missing. Oh no, there's another binaries. All right, I get to watch while I clean up my shitty mess that I made. See, the other thing is I'm not really going to know where this one went. It's probably right in there somewhere. I wanted to have this neat mix of real world and fake world stuff. So this, in theory, should be another single star thing somewhere. I should never have like a... Everybody's got... Is it Romulus? Oh, it was Romulus, I bet. I think originally I was thinking that Romulus was going to be a binary system, and I think it might be canonically in the series. Oh, it was. Yeah. That's definitely what it was then. But I ended up making it a single star system for some reason. I'll set it to the side here and work on Romulus later, because I might decide to, I've already done a description for it. Now this one's going to be hard, because it's basically just, oh, I bet it's Bernard's star. It's one of those. Might be Gillies. You know what's interesting, or not interesting, I think they're finding out that there are way more binary star systems, that actually having one star is almost turning into the rarity compared to binary and trinary systems, which I find interesting. So all the rest of these, there's going to be mistakes. Mistakes were made. So let's just delete those, and I'll deal with them as I discover them. There's another thing down here with water. All right, cool. I like going back and cleaning up things. Sometimes I'll version stuff more often. This I think is still version, oh, it's version 4. Sometimes I'll version stuff every time I open it, basically. It's like if I'm going to work on it, it's going to get another version. But I definitely haven't done that with this. I guess mainly because this is game-related material and not work. This mask I was using to export the map before I realized I could just use individual boards instead. So yeah, the earlier version of that just had this, and then I was going to export sections of it. And I was like, why aren't I just making these individual things? Because Fantasy Grounds, there's only like a maximum, there's a maximum sort of size your maps should be. Otherwise, bad things happen as far as on the user end. Your players are like, oh no, memory issues. And now, I can delete all this, which is going to save me so much space, or so much memory and RAM stuff. And this machine is built for graphic design, so I mean 64K or 128K RAM or some, or K, 128 meg. Like it's generally decently stacked. It's running a 1080 Ti, I think, that I got a few years ago. So it should be, it can handle this stuff graphically. So the main issue is if I exported all of these maps as one big giant map, I have players that, you know, their computers are 28 years old or some shit, it seems like, and it wouldn't work out too well for them as far as trying to display stuff. Their computers are so old they run Windows X instead of Windows 10. See, it's a Roman numeral joke. All right. Anyway, that is going to be it for now, because it's getting on towards the time where I want to go out and have a cigar and do a little bit of writing on the side. But I'll try to remember, again, there's no way these are going to be scintillating entertainment. It's going to be the sound of my voice telling stories and occasionally working on stuff, and occasionally a tip comes in. That said, it would be awesome for you if you enjoyed any part of this to subscribe, because that's what YouTube likes. It's not as much into views as much as getting subscribers for some reason. And that would encourage me definitely to do more of these, but I will try to get on as often as I can, because it doesn't cost me anything, basically, if I'm talking to you guys while I'm working at the same time. It's no big effort. I obviously am not, you know, making some fanciful graphic inner video with a bunch of editing and all the rest of that. So yeah, just like I said, turn me up to like 1.5, put me on in the background, and occasionally learn a little tidbit. Make a comment if you want. I will try to answer any you know, reasonably non-trolly question in the bottom there, and maybe even a couple of the trolly ones. And subscribe, and thanks for being here till the end. Take care.